I ranked all of the base game cards in Terraforming Mars in a huge tier list, and obviously there are some standouts that you always want to play around, and some shitters that you need to avoid in almost any scenario. But what if that wasn't the case? What if all of the cards were playable and none were too overpowered? That's what I want to explore in a two-part series. Today, in the first part, I will propose my own balance changes to the S tier cards in Terraforming Mars. So those 14 cards that I deem to be the best of the best. In part 2, which will come out in a bit, I will discuss my ideas on how to buff these 17 absolute worst cards in my tier list. So you can already see that my goal is not to bring all 208 cards on the exact same level, but instead to just eliminate S and F tier. The same approach I chose for balancing the base game and prelude corps a few months ago. In addition to that, I want to make sure that these cards keep their identity intact. I will not make Underground Detonations a generically good but boring heat producer, and I will not make Terraforming Ganymede a lame point card. These cards should feel the way they are right now, but play much better. But let's get started. First off, we have AI Central, the ultimate card drawing machine. This card is already situational if you draw it in the mid game. If you're already in the middle of a rush, you'll have to think twice if you really want to play this. But nevertheless, you certainly need to cut it in a draft, since it's legitimately the best card an engine player can find. It single-handedly can solve so many problems by drawing you all of the combo cards that you need. Science payoffs, Jovian multipliers, green combo pieces, late game point dumps, whatever. So, how to fix it? Well, I'd propose to lean more into the fact that AI is kind of a situational card. First of all, it should not grant a point. Eliminate every possibility of it being played in the late game and make it a pure early to mid game card draw machine. Also, this removes the possibility of getting a Vitor discount, a corp that already loves to play this card for its long game potential. Secondly, let's make it 2MC cheaper, moving it out of credit cost discount range, and let's also make it require 2 power prot. That makes the card 5MC more expensive on average and harder to play safely, since if you only have cards that grant 1 power prot, you can get tapped in between playing them. And lastly, and this is probably the biggest nerf, let's remove its building tag. This will make the card even harder to justify in the mid to late game and more difficult to play early on. I think in total this definitely keeps AI's identity intact, but makes it even more situational and significantly harder to play without touching its requirement, which I like at 3 science tags. Increasing that would just make it a win more card. Next up, Deimos down. Just to clarify, I'm talking about the base game version of this card, so the one that doesn't place a tile but removes 8 plants instead of 6. But that's a good place to start. Since the precedent is already set, I think we can change Deimos to only removing 6 plants. Obviously, the strongest part of the card is the 3 heat bumps though, which often allows you to snipe the bonus ocean on the track and just generally helps with rushing. I want to leave this intact, as I think it's key to the identity of the card. Instead, a way to balance Deimos further that I like is giving it a negative VP. If you think about it, you should definitely be punished by the world government for crashing a freaking moon onto Mars' surface. This will further cement Deimos as a rush card, decreasing its playability as a point card in the late game, and in combination with the fact that we changed its plant destruction from 8 to 6, I think this is already enough to push Deimos down to A tier. Additionally, I would also suggest to adjust its flavor text to "We don't need that moon anyways," right? Let's talk about Earth Catapult, a truly ridiculous card. It grants a global discount of 2MC, and it's very easily playable. That makes it a no-brainer in pretty much any starting hand, and just ridiculously unfun to play against. I have a few ideas to fix it. First of all, it will get the AI Central treatment. By removing the points on it and lowering its cost by 4, we remove its combo potential with Vitor and Credit Core, 2 of the strongest corps in the game. It will keep its Earth tag, even though this means it will still combo with Terracta and Point Luna, 2 more insane corps, but yeah, it's just necessary for lore reasons. But still, with this move we already lowered Earthcat's value by quite a bit, since 2 VP are worth more than 4 MC. For all other corps, at least in the early game, this would still be a buff rather than a nerf, since lowering the cost by 4 MC also means making the Earthcat much easier to play. and that's great for a card that wants to be played as soon as possible. To counterbalance this, we will introduce a requirement to the card. Earthcat will require 3 Earth tags to play, making it significantly harder to get down in Gen 1. Sure, you can still high roll with a corp and some preludes that grant you enough tags to play it, but even then it's weaker than before with no points on it, and it will feel more of an achievement to get it down. This might still be too little to bring this card down 1 tier, but this is where I'll leave it. Next up, Eco Zone. As an essential part of the green combo, this is an incredibly useful card, since it helps score points, collect resources, extend your ocean walk, or deny good conversion spots. I like how great it feels to play this card, and how it can offer various things at once. I want to keep its effect mostly the same. I like that it places a tile, and I don't want to touch its price or tags. So what do I want to change? Well, it's actually quite simple. We'll just change the ratio of animals to points from 2:1 to 3:1. There currently is no third point animal in the game, but in my mind that's not really a problem. By lowering just the point output, we keep the flexibility and fun factor of the card the same, but we still make it considerably worse and push it out of S tier in my opinion. Just what I intend to achieve. We managed to fix Deimos, let's fix GIA. The problem with this card is just that it does too much. It is the only flat 40R card, it places 2 tiles, it can be used in a fight over the bonus ocean, it destroys 6 plants, and it's a space event, meaning it has tons of combo potential and can be paid for with titanium. There's one thing I definitely want to keep intact about GIA, it being the only flat 40R card in the base game. I like that there are cards that you need to keep in mind when thinking about stuff like Terraformer or the bonus ocean with GIA and Deimos. I don't think I want to give GIA a negative point, since pushing an asteroid into Mars is in my opinion not the same as crashing the whole moon into it. Also, it would just be lame to fix it the same way as Deimos. I'd rather go the ice asteroid route. What do I mean by that? Well, giant ice asteroid shares 2/3 of its name with the card ice asteroid. And while they do similar things, GIA does way more for only 13 MC more. We can bring these cards closer together, which makes sense lore-wise, and serves in nerfing GIA. The main thing we'll do is remove the plant destruction. Why should an ice asteroid destroy 0 plants, but a giant ice asteroid destroys 6? Doesn't make any sense to me. Also, we'll make the card 2 MC more expensive. Think about it. Ice asteroid costs 23 plus 3, and big asteroid costs 27 plus 3. Together, they have the same effect as GIA. If we factor out the titanium we get from big asteroid, they cost 44 versus GIA's 39. With the 2 MC price increase, we bring GIA closer and still leave room for the big card discount you should get, as well as the fact that the card does not destroy any plants anymore. For me, that's enough to push GIA out of S tier, but due to its high impact, it will still be a situationally really good card. Let's talk about insects. With this card, we can't use the same methodology that we used with EcoZone. Changing insects from 1 production per plant tag to half a production per plant tag would completely kill the card. Worms is already bad enough, and that one is cheaper and has a lower requirement. Instead, we'll increase insects requirement and make it more expensive. At 8% oxygen and 13 MC cost, it will no longer be as insane, since the plant pro that grants cannot help you get the bonus bump anymore, and it also will just have less time to pay off its higher cost. I think these changes will be more than enough to bring insects down a tier or 2. Next up, kelp farming. In contrast to some other cards in S tier, kelp is not flashy and doesn't grant a game-breaking effect. It's just really good value for a plant producer that can often be played in the mid-game. Oceans, like no other parameter, can be pushed heavily by just 1 player, so if you draw kelp, you can often force it down yourself relatively easily. This makes the 6 ocean requirement the main problem, but this is also the part about the card I like so much. The fact it's a good play to SP an ocean or 2 just to get kelp down. That's nice. So we will keep the ocean requirement at 6 and just exchange 1 plant pot for 1 more instant plant. In my opinion, this is already a huge change, making the card less of a long-term play and more of an instant conversion enabler. And it means that trees is now the only freely playable 3 plant prot card, which is fair, in my opinion. -4 degrees is often harder to reach than 6 oceans. Large convoy can either be one of the most impactful point cards in the late game, or a tool in a gardener fight early on. It has massive combo potential, and is just one of the scariest cards to pass in a draft, period. So how to balance this card? I would like to keep the fun part of the card intact, meaning the plants and animals. I want you to be able to use this card like before, but just in a weaker version. And the easy solution for this is to cut back on all of the small side effects and accessories that it grants. Large convoy, in my opinion, does not need to yield 2 points and draw you 2 cards. It's fine if we reduce that to 1 point and 1 card. That way, large convoy doesn't range from good to insane, depending on your combo potential, but from mediocre to great. Perfect for a card in Terraforming Mars, in my opinion. I think one of the most difficult cards to balance might just be Mars University. Obviously, the effect is what's strong about it, but it has several smaller factors that also improve it. The science tag makes it so that the card triggers itself. The building tag means it's relevant for builder and contractor and allows you to pay for it with steel. The point makes it worthwhile to play even in the last gen, and the cheap price makes it playable no matter the strategy you're going for. Marsu is just overall busted. But I want to change something about the effect to balance it out. And the idea for that I got from a fan-made corporation I recently saw on Reddit. We'll make it so that playing a science tag grants you a science resource on Mars, similar to Olympus Conference. But instead of having to play another science tag to remove it and draw a card, instead you get an action that allows you to discard a card to remove as many science resources as you want, then reveal that many cards and keep one of them. This will make it so that you cannot draw an insane amount of cards, but just 1 per gen, because it's an action and not an effect. It still keeps the cycle aspect, which I think is important for flavor, and I still think it's quite good. Let me know in the comments what you think of this fix. Next up, let's talk about one of the most influential cards in the entire game, NRA. This card is the main reason why you always have to keep an eye on your opponent's plant tag count in the early to mid game. You never want to pass your opponent his 3rd plant tag in the draft, because if they can follow that up with NRA, they get insane value out of that card. Let's keep NRA the insane payoff it is right now, but make it much harder to play. Sort of like AGT does not need a nerf, since its crazy effect is balanced out by the fact that you need 7 freaking science tags to get it down. For NRA, I think we should require 5 plant tags for it to grant 4 plant prot. This will make it much harder to play in the early game. You cannot just get lucky with your preludes and get it down gen 1 anymore. And if you play NRA in the mid to late game, it's still strong, but not game breaking anymore. I think this is a simple fix for this overpowered card. In my opinion, Research Outpost is the only card I want to change fundamentally. I don't think the base game needs 3 global discounts. Of course, I could have just balanced this card by giving it a science requirement, but A, that would make it too similar to AGT, and B, only science strategies would be able to play it then, and if you go for science with a lot of card draw, you already increase your chances to draw into the 3 global discounts. So I think this would just mean that science will get even stronger. Research Outpost in its original form provides the smallest discount, but it also grants a lot of scoring potential and other advantages like the ability to pick up resources or help on a lot of milestones and awards. So how do I propose to balance it? I want to give it a 2 MC discount on science and city tags. I think this fits lore-wise, since it's a city, but also focuses on research. It is established early on in the terraforming process and researches how to survive on Mars. So other research as well as living on Mars will be easier thanks to it. This still means it's great for science, but even Rush will like it as a relatively cheap city that allows you to play certain science and city cards that you like for cheaper. Overall, it will make the card much weaker though, and hopefully will kick it out of S tier. Next up, Restricted Area. This one is just an incredibly easy to play, efficient card drawing machine that, because of its tile placement, also grants a ton of extra utility. Firstly, we'll restrict that tile placement. It's a damn restricted area. It shouldn't be close to cities, if you expect no one to actually go there. So let's say you cannot place this next to any cities. This of course is not enough to push it out of S tier though. What definitely will achieve that is its ability costing 3 MC instead of 2. I know, not the most creative way of fixing it, but I wanted to leave the rest of the card as is. There is one Jovian multiplier that deserves a nerf, and it's Terraforming Ganymede. What I always found interesting about this card is that it grants TR instead of points, and obviously I want to keep it that way. But let's make it even more of an outlier in the ranks of the Jovian multipliers, by removing its space tag. This, in my opinion, is already enough to nerf this card out of S tier. A big part of the Jovian strategy is getting titanium prot down in the early game, with IO mining, asteroid mining, or just simply something like titanium mine, and then using that titanium to play your big point scoring cards in a late game. By not being able to pay with titanium, TG indirectly becomes much harder to afford for someone going for a Jovian strategy, and therefore I think it's enough to push it out of S tier. But how the hell are we balancing viral enhancers? The effect it grants is iconic. I have no idea how I would change it to make viral weaker. Instead, my idea is to make viral require 2 microbe tags and make it 2 MC more expensive. 2 microbe tags is actually a pretty steep requirement. In the base game, there are only 16 microbe tags, one of which is an event, so that doesn't help, and one is on viral itself. So there are only 14 that you could play to unlock this card. By the way, microbes are the 4th rarest tags. The only tags that are rarer are city tags, animal tags, and Jovian tags. And since there are some microbes with requirements of their own, those might not even help you to get viral down early. The 2MC price increase is just for those cases where viral is already playable and a no-brainer, as it is right now. It costing 11 plus 3 means that it really should score 3 points or more to actually pay off. But what do you think? Is my change enough to balance out viral? And that was it. All S tier cards nerfed to hopefully an acceptable state. I think nerfing strong cards is way less fun than buffing weak ones, but is also way more important. Bad cards do not really matter in the grand scheme of things, since you can just choose not to buy and play them. Strong cards will always define the way the game is played. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments how you would have changed these cards and what you think of my nerfs. And if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And please also check out my Twitch. Have a good one guys, and goodbye.